and we have a lovely Nathan Crisfield here tonight with us. He has a gym in Albury, I'm going to have to echo it, and has a great wealth of knowledge and expertise on training women for adventure and fitness and strength and just living their best lives. So I also have Sophie and Shona from Camino Women here. So yeah, welcome to you all. I hope this evening is really informative and that you get some lovely nuggets of wisdom from Nathan. He's very sweetly joined us as a favor to our community. So I'm super, super grateful to have you here, Nathan. And thank you very much for bringing all your wealth of knowledge to share with our women.
Awesome. Thanks, Pippa. Hello, ladies. So, yeah, Pippa asked me to do this a little while ago. I guess I have my whole mission is to provide whatever knowledge I can, but mostly life experience. And you would be forgiven for wondering why a bloke who's in his mid-30s has any experience in women's health issues. But the reality is, in my industry, you spend quite a lot of your time working with women. And I have a toxic trait for having to know how things work, and I have a toxic trait for having to fix things. But falling into the space with middle-aged women who were starting to go through perimenopause and menopause kind of happened. Me falling into that space happened almost by accident, I'd say. Like, our women who had been with us for quite a few years hit that stage of life and were experiencing changes that, our normal methods weren't able to resolve. So me being me, kind of wanted to know why. But that all kind of coincided with the time where I started to experience a lot of hormonal changes too. So I've been down that road of having to fix my own hormones, my gut health. And so I've got a bit of, I got to understand, from a male point of view, how it feels when your key driving hormones aren't functioning very well, when your cortisol is elevated. For us, it's testosterone, obviously. Mine was really, really low. And my gut health plagued me for many years, and that has a lot of other symptoms that obviously impact hormones as well, which is, just so happens to be a lot of the things that women who go through perimenopause and menopause suffer with. So I just happen to understand how it feels, and I just happen to be a bit of a nerd, I guess, around the science of how we can, what can we employ to help fix that. But from a life experience point of view, I've got a unique story of how I ended up in fitness and kind of why my body went through the changes it did from a hormonal point of view and a physiological point of view. So I was a drug addict from a young age and lived a very precarious lifestyle, I would say. So I've done a lot of damage to myself through those years. And my reason for getting into health and fitness really became about behavior change for myself, which I obviously then kind of undertook like a life and body transformation, I suppose, which landed me in a space where I wanted to help more people unlock their potential through those simple elements of movement, food, sleep. And the fourth pillar that we've added in the last few years is linking our members in with naturopaths and people that can give you that fourth pillar, which it's not just menopausal women who suffer from this, it is younger women too. Hormones are more out of balance than they've ever been. And yeah, through my poor choices of lifestyle, it led me down that road where I did do a lot of damage to my hormones and my body physically as well. And when you put what I went through, even though it was self-inflicted, it's not too dissimilar to the symptoms I see in people that are, have had a poor relationship with food, where they're in a binge restrict cycle for a lot of their life. Alcohol has played a role in their life for a long time. They go through the same symptoms as I did. So incorporating what I learned from a life point of view into the behavior change, because when you break everything down, it is behavior that we need to change in order to use exercise and nutrition to help transform our lives. So that's kind of the very short version of why I do what I do, and why I specifically have spent a lot of time working with women that are going through that perimenopause and menopause stage of life. Once we sort of highlighted that there was something we needed to change, I added naturopathy in, but I also went and done some study with Stacey Sims, who some of you may have seen online. She's very prominent in this space these days. But I used her knowledge and her courses to upskill myself on the strategies required for women that they could apply to their daily life to help with what they were feeling. So I'm going to share my screen, and I've prepared a few slides, basically mostly to help me stay on track so I don't ramble. But we had a little bit of technical issues, so I'm just using my iPad to share this, so hopefully it works well enough for you all. Okay. How's that, guys? Good?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Beautiful. All right, so I'll skip over the part. This is really much my introduction, but like just the basic methods. Anything I show you today is really just about what basic strategies and simple strategies you can apply consistently to move you from point A to point B. All right, so there's no real medical advice here. There's just my what I've experienced, what I've seen, and what I know works, and what we've been doing for 2 to 3 years now that we've seen good results with. And it comes down to 4 pillars. The strength training, but it's about the right type of strength training, which I'll go into very shortly. Just like everyone says, it is just about balanced nutrition, and I'll go deeper into that shortly. Those 2 things are only as good as your mindset and lifestyle allow them to be. So I spend a great deal of my coaching these days isn't on the floor. It's mindset and behavior change programming and accountability coaching, if you want to put it like that. But building personalized strategies for people based off what their personality traits are, their lifestyle habits are, what their lifestyle is, what job they have, how do we best manipulate what we know we need to do to fit into that. So we personalize that here at Peakshape because no one's going to fit into a box, because I definitely don't. And the final element is, we refer very closely with some naturopaths in town. They also look after a couple of our online clients through telehealth. And my job is to, in the first 28 days, is to get someone to a baseline of understanding what they need to do nutritionally and strength training wise. Once they have got that energy improvement, which is usually what's lacking, and maybe some sleep issues that we need to sort out, they generally get some improvements with us in the first 28 days. And then I would refer them potentially onto a naturopath, or I have a women's health clinic that I work with as well, to get that guided support around hormone health. And if, the women's health clinic is probably the place I refer to if someone wants to engage with hormone therapy, because it's not very readily available in where we are in this district. So those are our main pillars. I like to touch on this so that it's a bit, just to get some clarity around what the different phases are. So, and I have a little joke here that menopause actually means take a break from men. So those reproductive years is where the end of those reproductive years for women who have passed that 40 bracket is where you might start to experience those changes. The most obvious ones are like brain fog. Sometimes it's weight gain, sleep disturbances, but general energy output or low energy availability is what you start to see struggle around that early 40s or mid 40s bracket. But perimenopause generally itself can last for around 10 years from 40 to 50. But menopause itself is just one day on the calendar. And it's not really turned to menopause until you have no menstrual cycle for 12 months. And I've experienced a lot of women where they'll go 7 to 8 months with no menstrual cycle and then they'll get one again. So it can get a bit mucked up, I suppose, in the terms. But perimenopause is by far the probably most tricky and detrimental period that women go through. Post-menopause, it's kind of the one beauty about getting that, maybe if it's 55 to 57 or early or 60, that's how, like, the general state, the physiological state you're in at that point. And from a hormone point of view, the drum bonus of that is that there'll be no more fluctuations. This is how you are feeling physically and mentally at that time. That's how you should stay around, for the rest of your life, basically. So that's the one bonus of what women go through with all these changes. Because let's be honest, 30s and 40s aren't exactly a smooth sail either. But men also go through this, which I think should be talked about more often. What I went through with my testosterone declining is what they term andropause, where it declines quite rapidly to quite a low point. So libido's low, brain fog's really high, mood, your general like dopamine, serotonin, like your love for life just isn't there. And I would put that down to, like, for a lot of males who drink when they retire or start to take up drinking more heavily later in life, I would put that down to that lack of drive, lack of self-worth, if you want to put it that way. That's probably something I felt. And that shift in a relationship, if a woman's going through perimenopause or menopause, there's all these changes happening, but a man's also experiencing these changes. Life kind of can get turned upside down. And that's where, I see it in men that probably drink more than they should at that age and are quite, unhappy as opposed to how they were in their 30s and 40s. And I have no real physical proof to back any of this up. It's just what I've experienced and what I've witnessed that, I've seen, in my community of members, I've seen a few marriages hit a breaking point when both partners are hitting that mid 40 to 50 bracket. And I do think that there's an element of what's happening with your body that's starting to dictate behavior and mood. And if that's not communicated very well, or if neither person understands what's happening, I think it can cause a few issues. So that's just my opinion. You can take it or leave it, but that's just what I've experienced. But the things that I see women first state to me when I first meet them or have a call with them is the social and cultural factors sort of go back to, and once again, some of this will be very opinionated and you can take it or leave it if you want. But as women, you've been really beaten around with your relationship with food and the way that you were sort of viewed to a lot of the time, how you should look, how you should act. The role you play as a mother meant that you didn't prioritize yourself for quite a long time. And a lot of those sort of two factors for me have made this period of time where menopause hits more detrimental, because what I've most struggled with in this phase of getting women to get through their first 28 days is that they have a fear of failing, they have an inability to prioritize themselves, and they're struggling with the transition of, because a lot of their kids have started to leave home or they're more grown up, they're struggling with a bit of identity crisis. And for me, I think the element of that where, it was very much the woman does a fair bit more than the bloke in the house. And these days, women work so much more than possibly they did 30 years ago. I think a lot of those factors have, made this a little bit harder for women that are going through this in this era right now. And the relationship with food is very much a lack of consistency for me. I mean, you've been through the last 20 to 30 years, women have been fed 1,000 different diets sometimes, and the way that messaging was delivered, it never allowed women to be consistent with a style of nutrition. So you've tried a lot of different things and your body's never been able to adjust, and it's given you a really poor relationship with food is a lot of the things I come up with. And most of the time, what we have to work on is encouraging and teaching to eat more, because everything was such a restrictive style of eating back when diets were so on trend. And I touched before on the mental health issues that I've seen and experienced myself. Body composition changing very much leads back into that social and cultural factor, how you view yourself, and then your body changing so drastically, and you're not sure, and not being sure why, because you've not really changed anything. It's just starting to change dramatically. Mood fluctuations, motivation, serotonin, dopamine, those really key drivers in how we feel and how we function. They fluctuate heavily. Injuries is another massive one that we see. Soft tissue injuries like plantar fasciitis, frozen shoulder. I see a lot of ACL issues, and they are somewhat a result of hormones fluctuating and how hormones actually control joint elasticity, which I can go into when I get to the exercise portion. Gut health is a massive one. Gut health, structurally, your microbiome changes dramatically in this, especially in the perimenopause phase. Ultimately, that a lot of that comes down to the relationship with food stuff, where you could possibly lacking enough key micronutrients and enough color and variety through your diet, which doesn't support gut health. But what sort of affects it more in perimenopause is that your liver is mostly responsible for helping to excrete hormones as they are produced and excreted. Due to the fluctuations and the amount of hormone being excreted, your gut bile starts to take some of that because your liver can't detoxify all of it. So what happens there is you see a change in gut microbiome, which I can attest to, because a lot of my gut health issues were very much drawn back to the amount of cortisol and adrenal fatigue that I put myself through all those years of drug abuse and living a very fast-paced lifestyle. And I just happened to be a very busy person naturally, which when you give someone like me drugs, I only exacerbate that. So my hormones were, I overproduced so many of them at a young age in my early 20s that my gut health suffered off the back of that, and so did my hormones. So women very much experience that issue, and it's something we work on heavily with the naturopaths, and I work on that from a nutritional point of view to help them increase variety and increase micronutrients. Sleep is obviously affected. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that. There's lots of reasons for that. A lot of that comes down to being tired and wired. Like the really simple aspects of sleep being affected, like not getting deep sleep and not getting into sleep, very much comes back to being tired and wired. And if we improve a woman's nutrition, we do see massive improvements in sleep. And from there, we can then look at whether there is a herbal supplement or an extract that will help just get some consistency, or we can just deal with if hot flushes are a thing at night. My girlfriend is in her mid-30s and she gets extremely hot at night. There's things like sage and other extracts that can help bring your body temperature down and manage your cortisol, which is a massive factor. So is serotonin. It's also a huge factor in heat fluctuations when you sleep, temperature regulation when you're trying to wind down and get to sleep. I will show you these graphs and I'll explain what they mean. But when I draw some of these things back to what you might feel on a day-to-day basis, the key things that you're suffering with from a hormonal point of view, like if you look at this is what a woman's cycle would generally look like in her, reproductive years if her cycle is working well. which not all women are. There is also women who in their 30s who struggle with menstrual cycles. But when you look at the perimenopause cycle, it's no wonder you feel a bit out of whack when you see these massive spikes and massive dips in progesterone and estrogen. How you'll feel that on a day-to-day basis, at times it would be in low energy, brain fog. From a physical point of view, it can be like joint pain. Like I mentioned before, joint elasticity. Estrogen's a massive component when we talk about joint elasticity. So how well your joints can bend, so knees, shoulders, that kind of thing. So if you're still like if you're a runner, or if you've been down to saying doing CrossFit or a high impact type of exercise, and you're saying to experience injuries, which is like I do get women coming to me from other gyms where they've started to experience injuries where they didn't before, and my answer to that is that your body's starting to not adapt very well to that style of training. It's responsible for appetite, serotonin, bone density is a massive one, and I'll touch on our strategy for bone density loss. Progesterone, the other key driver for women from a hormone point of view. Basically, this hormone's job is to work counteractive to estrogen. So when they're both firing out of whack like that, like you've got estrogen spiking here, but progesterone's not, in this part of someone's cycle, you're going to experience muscle aches and pains. You're going to experience, either an increase in appetite, particularly for sugary foods. You might get spikes in core temperature out of nowhere, inflammatory responses such as that. I'm just touch quickly on this. Women make testosterone, and luckily for women, testosterone continues to be produced even when you go through perimenopause, and it's still an important hormone for women, but obviously very, very important for men. Cortisol, if you've got cortisol, coming through your algorithm on social media to get people talk about high cortisol all the time. The reality is that we just want to avoid elevated levels of cortisol. We still need cortisol. It's really important. Where we probably experience high cortisol is from that compounding effect of poor sleep and not enough food coming in each day is where you start to see elevations in cortisol. There'll be other reasons as well, but they're the ones that I focus on because they're the ones we can control on a daily basis. So my method for controlling cortisol very much comes back to the right type of exercise and the right amount of exercise, but most importantly, the right amount of food and the right amount of fats, carbohydrates and fats. And carbohydrates are really, really important in that perimenopause phase. Once again, this is a bit opinionated. I look at it like this. It's definitely a detrimental time, and it's like for the women we had going through it in the early days, and we didn't really have all the answers for them. It was stressful for all of us because we were relied upon to help them with their body and mind and nutrition, and we didn't really have the answers many years ago. And the science wasn't there, even if we did know what we were looking at. But ultimately, you've got a choice to make in this period of life, and you can view it as, why is this happening to me? Or is this happening for me? It's a really good time. Like for me, personally, all these things that happen to my body, the only offset to it is that I'm hyper aware of what my body's doing, and at times that can be a curse, but it's also a blessing. But it gave me an opportunity to have a good look at my lifestyle, my nutrition, the things I do, where am I spending my time, and what am I spending my time on, like as far as what's taking energy from me and what's giving me energy. So for a woman going through this period of life, I think you can definitely take the opportunity to view it as an opportunity to change, either engage in exercise if you're not already, change the style of exercise you are doing, enjoy the fact that it's a great idea to eat more. Like if we can get past that barrier of eating more and just enjoy food again, and knowing that it's actually good for you, if this period of life brings you to that, which is what I encourage, this is what I teach, the goal, you could open up, a much happier next 30 years or more. But the other element from a perspective point of view on that is that most women I meet are viewing themselves as being so far behind. And, I guess if any of you are doing the Camino walk, like if you looked at it as if each step or each rep in the gym is actually making me 10% stronger. And let's say you're a Camino group and you're all going on a walk. If you put 10 of you together and you're all 10% stronger, you're all 100% stronger and more resilient. Like there's a compounding effect to doing each rep and each step and making each change as is needed. There's a real compounding effect to that if you can just enjoy the process and take enjoyment in the fact that the changes you're making are actually really enjoyable and they're actually going to be really good for you long term. And it's like an elephant, you eat it one bite at a time. So doing little changes all the time starts to install that positive feedback loop. And that's how I go about trying to change that fear of failing, because it's a very prominent thing. Most women I meet will tell me a month later, if I ask them what nearly stopped them, they'll say it was fear. And once they get on the other side of that fear, the way they carry themselves is totally different to how they were when we first met them. And that's that for me is a mindset change, and it's really the most important part. I'll go through some of this. I won't go into massive detail because I'd like to open up the questions at the end. But the most important thing about this is you don't really need to understand this in the first instance. It's not what I teach people in the first instance. But what you need to understand is that muscle is the most prominent factor for body composition changes, immune system function, liver function, skin, hair, and nail health. Really, really depends heavily on the amount of muscle mass that you have. So this is why protein is so important, and this is why every influencer you see now will be talking about protein. It's not new, it's just that important. And you can see here that like eating alone actually takes up about 12% of your daily calorie expenditure. Muscle is obviously the massive factor. So the more muscle you have, the more calories you can metabolize. But eating itself actually requires a lot of metabolic burn. So the more you eat, the more calories you're actually burning. Exercise is not that big of a contributor. It only takes up around 2% of your week. If you look at it in time and hours. And temp regulation, I'm sure menopausal women would say that it's more than 5% because you spend most of your day getting hot and cold. But the massive factor here is muscle, which is why we focus so heavily on strength training and protein intake. The only thing I'm going to talk about here is the amount of protein you eat and why carbs are so important. Because I reckon if you all put your hands up now, you would probably say that at one time in your life, you've probably restricted carbohydrates because we were told that was a good idea. If we talk protein, if we didn't measure it on a calculator, basically, if you pick up a 30 gram serve of protein, is going to look a bit like if you held it in your hand and it took up a bit more than the palm of your hand, or at least the palm size of your hand. That's going to be around 25 to 30 grams, and you need to eat 25 to 30 grams 3 times a day. So all your main meals need to be around that 25 to 30 gram protein serving per meal. So anything above 30 is also going to be great. Ultimately, your goal should be to have at least one snack a day, but hopefully 2, and they should have 15 to 20 grams per day in them. when we talk about this, I've got a whole book for this that we give our clients to break this down in a really simple form, and it's us talking on video plus text, and we sit with them each week in the first 28 days to help them build out their own meal plan. So we don't give them meal plans, I refuse to. We provide recipe books, and we provide templates, and we teach how to actually make those meals yourself and how to structure up your protein per day. Later on in someone's journey is where we would talk to them about and teach them how to calculate their amount of protein if you were to use a calculator, but I have a calculation right here. I wouldn't recommend anyone who's exercising be at that 1.7 gram bracket per day. I would much prefer them to be 2 grams per kilo of body weight or more. So for most people, that's going to sit you at about 100 to 120 grams of protein per day, which is why you need at least 30 in main meals, because that gets you to about 90. And then if you have 1 or 2 snacks a day, that gets you to the 100, 120 a day. The amount of days you do that for, if you can do that to 5 to 6 days a week, your ability to have consistent energy and change body composition along the way is dramatically improved, let alone longevity and health when we talk enough muscle mass and skeletal muscle mass to deal with the aging process around mobility. And that's mostly when we talk mobility and just overall health. Carbohydrates, just eat them. Don't get too caught up on like which ones and where and when to eat them. Like if you're doing intense exercise, they're going to be best placed between 45 to 90 minutes and even 2 hours post the workouts where your body's going to use them most. But for most part, especially in the first 28 days, I just get people eating them. I don't really get too carried away with where and when. Just get used to the fact that they're good for you. And I don't need to tell you that all vegetables and fruits are going to be good for you. The more color you have, the better your gut microbiome is going to be, and the better your overall energy is going to be. And fats, what I commonly kind of coach with fats is that, once again, don't get caught up on the amounts in the first period. If you've been restricting yourself to, a couple of meals a day, skipping breakfast, or just having a really light breakfast and a really light lunch and a big dinner, just start increasing all of these things. And fats, their main role is to support brain health, joint health. But if you've been under high amounts of stress for a long period of time, your nervous system is really overloaded, and high fat diet, or adding a good amount of fats in, I should say, is a good way to help start to soothe your nervous system. And eating fats before dinner is a really good way to help increase a better quality sleep, because your nervous system and your cortisol and those stress hormones are what's usually limiting people to get a quality sleep. And the only thing I'll kind of touch on with that is it's about 80% consistency. If you are eating correctly for 4 to 5 meals a day, a little bit of chocolate at night, it's not going to kill you. There wouldn't be too many nights where I don't have a piece of chocolate or something sweet. And there's 1 or 1.5 days a week where you can still enjoy yourself without ruining your health. So if you can be 80% consistent and 20% to still enjoy yourself, that's a really good, consistent way to still enjoy the process. I've been that person early in my time, after removing drugs and my life and changing my lifestyle that way. I was that robotic person, and everything was perfect every single day. And you just don't. It's just not that enjoyable, to be perfectly honest with you. So I don't teach people to be that way unless they're already inclined to be like that. You gotta lift heavy shit. When we talk exercise, it is literally about lifting compound lifts. So we're talking squats, deadlifts, bench presses, pull-ups. There's not a woman in that gym who doesn't get on the pull-up bar at some point. Those heavy things that replicate movements you do in life, they're the ones that stimulate the most muscle growth. They are the ones that challenge your nervous system so much. And apart from the body composition side of things, They are really important for adapting to stress. So when we talk cortisol and how exercise plays a role in that, exercise already elevates cortisol. But if you're exposing yourself to exercise regularly, then your body's ability to adapt and manage cortisol becomes much more efficient. And when you're tired, wired, and stressed, if you can go and get that output somewhere from an exercise point of view, your body just feels better after it. And no one can really deny that fact. Just if you're anxious, going for a walk automatically just helps. So the other thing I really like to harp on about weight training, especially compound lifts, is that there is lots of research these days with brain health experts where there's been shown to improve or slow down the effects of dementia and Alzheimer's, which with the lives we all lead these days, we're probably at a higher risk of. And dementia and Alzheimer's are also a massive effect of, long periods of poor quality sleep. Alzheimer's, dementia are a massive effect from a lifestyle where you've done shift work or you've had poor sleep. So just quickly, the reality, the way they explain it is that mitochondria is released through your blood-brain barrier crossing when you do compound lifts. That's the way that the blood vessels are stimulated through doing heavy weight training. That mitochondria is responsible for finding its way to your brain, and that is how it slows down the effects of dementia and Alzheimer's. Not to mention it takes a lot of coordination and nervous system adaptation to lift weights. So because your brain's active doing that exercise regularly, it's actually getting to use all those key parts of your brain. So yeah, for brain health, really important. And I like to really highlight that fact. And the reality, and it's obvious that it's just good for longevity and feeling strong every day. The intangible part of weight training that I see all the time is I have women come into my gym not feeling that confident in themselves, and within 8 to 12 weeks, or even the women have been with us for years, the way they carry themselves and the way they go about life drastically changes as a result of probably being around the people they're with, but being able to move heavy things is really just makes you feel stronger, and you can carry that kind of confidence into elsewhere in your life. The final thing is not all weight training is going to be perfect for a woman depending on what stage of life they're in. The reality is women who are younger can get away with a different style of weight training, and it might be the weight training that you've been used to before, where it's more high volume stuff. Due to those joint elasticity changes, and there's a factor of muscle signaling changes as women hit perimenopause due to the hormone fluctuation and hormone decline, which is why you don't feel as strong. The reality is you are still really strong. You just don't feel that strong. And muscle signaling has changed. So there's a different style of weight training where we work on a power basis, not what would be normally called a hypertrophy basis. So you're doing really low volume reps. So anywhere from 3 to 8 repetitions till you fail. So we're using multiple sets per exercise to induce failure of the muscle. And that is how we grow muscle more. That's how we can get muscle to adapt better without causing injuries. So that is the strategy we picked up from Stacey Sims once we were given the understanding of what's happening with the muscle. So we have seen an injury improvement since using this style of training in the last 18 months to 2 years. We've seen better body composition, and the women just love being able to lift things heavier. The other style of training that's really important is cardio is still really important for a couple of reasons. Mental and physically, you want that endurance, and then really there's a real resilience factor. It's one of those non-tangible things, but there's a real resilience factor to doing a circuit style training where you're on a timer. So it has always also been shown to be the most effective way to target visceral fat tissue, so belly fat. It's a really shit word to use, but it's just the reality, I guess. insulin resistance is what we're tackling there, which is why protein is also important. But insulin resistance is your body's ability to burn glucose. So this style of training, your body can access glucose more effectively, and it's also really effective from a time point of view. Like a 20-minute sprint interval training session is highly effective when performed weekly for targeting that belly fat area, also adapting your body to stress. And because we can add impact, like small amounts of jumping and those style of exercises, jumping and impact training is really good for bone density. So we can kind of combine the whole lot in this one workout, as opposed to, let's say, like a Les Mills style class or your general HIIT circuits, which are still really beneficial, but sprint interval is a much shorter working timer and a longer rest timer, so you get to catch your breath more, so that you have consistent efforts throughout that workout, whereas a high intensity interval training workout is a bit longer and the timers are varied. So they both play a role, but sprint interval training is the one that we really try and encourage women in that older phase, in that perimenopause phase and menopause phase, to get into. And it's usually the thing you think you can't do most. So once we do get you into a few of those workouts, I do see like really positive outcomes from a mindset and emotional point of view, because it's something you can tick off and do, and it stimulates lots of endorphins, that kind of exercise. Just quickly, I don't need to tell anyone how good stretching is, but this is where Pilates and yoga plays a really good role, which I know is really popular, even more these days. Pilates and yoga has a really big role to play when we talk about strength training, because strength training by its nature is going to tighten up muscles in order to grow them. That's going to be the delayed onset soreness that you get. Joints are also going to get restricted as muscles lengthen and shorten. So Pilates and yoga, apart from being good for your mind and soul, it's also going to help you improve and be able to progress more often in weight training. So really big on the people, our clients who go and do the Pilates and go and do yoga. We don't run it in our gym. I like to stay in my own lane, but really beneficial. And Pilates also has a very cognitive effect to it, where you are teaching your body to engage for long periods of time, which is a really good thing when we talk about core engagement and just getting that mind-muscle connection. Otherwise, general stretching, I make all the members do that. At every session, we also run a stretch session on a Saturday. So they're really important. There's one divisive topic that I will mention before I jump off the exercise factor. Walking is not a great way to change body composition. So zone 2 cardio is where walking would fit into, where you can still hold a conversation whilst doing it. Women are already endurance beasts, basically. So you're born with more oxidative fibers, gives you a higher endurance capacity, which makes you better runners. My girlfriend can absolutely outrun me every day, which doesn't lend itself to being in zone 2. So if you're in zone 2, you're just not working very hard. You're just really adapted that already. So this is why that sprint and HIIT training is why we really encourage that also, because you kind of need to make you do the hard stuff, because you're already quite strong, and you already have a high endurance capacity. I know quite often I hear women say that they don't, or they're not fit, but the reality is you're born that way. You have a better endurance capacity than men, and we need to push you out and into that zone 3, zone 4 high heart rate area if we're going to really good adaptations from a strength and endurance point of view, as well as change body composition. I'll touch on a couple of its supplements and adaptogens that are safe for everyone to use. There's a list of them here. I'm only going to touch on a couple of them. Protein powder. I'm not that big on protein powder. by no means should you use protein powder as a supplement for food. It should always just be an add-on, or an if I have nothing else to consume but I need to eat something sort of method. If you consume too much protein powder, it's highly likely you'll inflame your gut, which is very counterproductive when we're trying to suppress bloating and other gut issues. So yeah, places I would use protein powder would be if you use smoothies, you can use it in that, but I would also encourage you to add things like yogurt, cottage cheese, ricotta cheese, other things that are already high in protein and come from an animal source and aren't broken down and made in factories where we don't know what's in them. If you're going to use a protein powder, I can actually probably share a link of a brand that is highly reputable. And I've tried and tested lots of them, and this one I'm very fond of. Other places you can use protein powder is in things like a yogurt to add texture and consistency. You can make protein balls and desserts and stuff with it. It's good for all that stuff. If it's consumed with food, you've got a better way of breaking it down and causing less gut issues. But it's definitely not a food replacement. Creatine is the other one. Females should be aiming to have 3 to 5 grams of creatine every day. The brain health adaptations around creatine are undisputed these days. We talk Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive function. If you are getting poor sleep, improves dramatically if you're taking creatine as a supplement every day. It's also been tested on people with depression and shown to have as good of effect as antidepressants when taking in a therapeutic dose. So it's a really powerful supplement. It is also produced naturally in the body. It's stored in skeletal muscle, and it is also found in red meat. So it's not harmful at all. It doesn't give you big muscles. 3 to 5 grams a day just improves long-term brain health and overall strength output, because creatine's main job, and the reason it's stored in skeletal muscle, is because its job is to convert energy. So ADP into ATP. So if you were to pick something up off your desk, your body has to create and convert energy for you to complete that task. Creatine just helps us do that more efficiently. So magnesium powder, there's not too many people who shouldn't take a magnesium powder. There's no real contradictions with taking one. If you're suffering from not being able to get to sleep, or you're just jittery and your nervous system's bound up, a good quality magnesium glycinate can actually help ease those symptoms. And if you're someone who's highly anxious and struggling to eat breakfast as a result of being anxious, and that's usually a result of having bad sleep, having magnesium before a meal can help you ease those symptoms, shut down your fight or flight a little bit, get your digestion working to the point where you can start to eat. Because if we keep shutting off, skipping meals, especially breakfast, as a result of being highly anxious, your anxiety is just going to elevate over the day. So getting people to have magnesium in the morning around meal times is a strategy we do use. The rest of these are great things, but I'm not going to suggest you take them without seeing someone like a naturopath or someone or a nutritionist who is qualified to actually prescribe these herbs, because they have contradictions to them. Ashwagandha can't be taken for people with thyroid issues. Rhodiola is amazing. I take it, but it's not going to be beneficial for everybody. If you're highly stressed already, rhodiola might not help. Mushroom extracts, reishi, can be really detrimental to women, so you should really get advice before you take that. But these are good quality. These are good things to explore with a naturopath once your diet is really solid. Obviously, vitamin D and all those other basic ones are also really good, but those three I just spoke about are my key ones that I would encourage and help people use, no matter who you are. Quality sleep will outdo all of these supplements, so will exercise, and so will the right amount of protein every day. No supplement is going to work as well or be as beneficial long term if your nutrition is still below where it needs to be, and if you're not exercising the way that you probably should be, depending on what your goals are. So you can't just supplement and expect to get the most out of them, is what I'm saying. But they are very beneficial. that brings me to the end. So like I said, we have a base camp program where our whole model is to work on the basics. And my mission over the next 10 years, or we're about 3 years into this mission, is to help 100,000 people achieve their own personal transformation, and we just call it unlock their potential. And we're going to attempt to do that not just through coaching. We're going to work really heavily on providing good educational content, starting a podcast to try and get more simple information out, and make it contextual. So you would have obviously just heard me bang on a whole lot about menopause and trying to make it contextual to how you might be feeling on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the things I see on social media, on YouTube, are not necessarily contextual. It's people trying to inflate their own sense of self-worth and ego by just blurting out lots of shit that sounds really good. The reality is it needs to be put into context, because everyone is battling. They might have the same symptoms, but there could be a different reason why they're there, and there could be a different element of their lifestyle that is impeding them from a behavior point of view or a structure point of view from actually getting what they want. And the other thing about, I guess that is my goal is to, build it up slowly. I've built this program, I'd say I call it the anti-challenge, is not to be set in a certain amount of weeks. Like, it's designed to take one step at a time at the pace you do it at, so you learn the steps in the right order. Typically, most gyms run challenges, and they're like a 10 or 6 or 8 weeks cycle, where people eat a certain way and train a certain way to get a certain result. The problem I have is that people do those and then they just keep repeating the cycle and no one learns anything. So I created the 28-day base camp program as our first step. And it doesn't you don't have to complete everything in the first 28 days. You have all the resources. You still have access to the coaching post that. But 28 days is just a nice bracket to put around it as an introduction. So that's my method for doing things. And there's some information there. Please give us a follow if you want to watch me do some funny shit sometimes, and just be really opinionated. And at all times, most videos I do are to try and get at least one point across to one person. So my goal going forward will be to provide more information via YouTube from Instagram, where you can actually go and watch a longer video of me explaining a certain topic to take it and actually apply it yourself. So yeah, please give us a follow. Our details are down there at the bottom. I'll stop sharing now. And I'm happy to take some questions if anyone has any.
Well, please go for it if anyone wants to ask Nathan something while he's here. Here's the opportunity.
I talk a lot.
Ready? Here's Nona. Go for it.
Hi, thanks for that. I want you to help solve a battle. Well, not a battle, a conflict between me and my son. So I've got teenagers. So they're coming in on the hormones. I'm going out, so it's a great time. But anyway, my son's really keen on his gym and doing the home gym and weights and everything. And he's very keen on pushing me. And he thinks that I should be starting on really heavy weights. Like, he has the idea of go until failure, 10 weights, but I'm a bit apprehensive about starting high. I'd rather start really low and build up. So what should I be doing?
Yeah, so like depending on where you've started, this is why we personalize everything so much, is that if I can get context on where someone started. So I'll ask you, what is your history with exercise and weight training specifically?
I haven't done weight training for a good 12 months, so very out of practice. Never did heavy weights, and I just hike a lot at the moment with my exercise. I'm not doing cardio either. Yeah,
like where I start, like there's nothing wrong with starting simple, because you're always going to be able to go up. So the most recent lady I started with, she's based online because she's based remotely. Just got to get some TRXs, get some kettlebells, and just squat with a kettlebell. Do bench presses from the floor with kettlebells, really light weights, because we really want your body to adapt. And how I would structure that for someone is like do really light weights, but do quite a few sets of those weights. That way you're getting volume in, and over time you can worry about then progressing the weight up. And like I'm here for a long time, not a good time. So I've got no interest in hurting anybody. And they're going to learn, everyone learns so much better. And you get the positive feedback loop if you can see your weights progressing regularly. If I start someone too heavy and I have to regress their weights later, it only they only feel like a failure. They may not be, but they do feel like a failure. So start much lighter. Your son just wants the best for you, but all young men are idiots. And we do dumb shit.
All right, so I win. 1 to mum.
Thanks, Fiona. Hey, so what would you?
Yeah, I just thought it might be good to share where Nathan's based, and then I actually really like Teresa's message in the chat there, which is about your thoughts on intermittent fasting.
So what I've researched, what I've experienced also, like I've tried intermittent fasting just because I try most things to see how it works. When you go back to that point I made around oxidative fibers and you're like a female's endurance capacity already being quite large, when you're fasting, you're putting your body into this high stress state and you're asking it to access nutrients that you would otherwise store. So intermittent fasting has been proven to do lots of damage as a result of those factors that women are already adapt to not eating or doing stressful things for long periods of time. So it doesn't really get the results body composition wise. And that's the same regardless of the age of the woman. It works much better for men. We get all the good shit, men. But it's just been shown to not work very well. The only time I think you'll find it being used is if there's like a severe metabolic issue, so like diabetes, insulin resistance, maybe where a nutritionist might use a method of intermittent fasting. But long periods of it are just going to be detrimental. And the other, going back to my hate for influences, there's so much context missing around intermittent fasting. If you're going to do intermittent fasting correctly, you actually need to ensure that you still eat the right amount of calories and the right amount of protein. You're just doing it in a smaller window. It's not an excuse to eat less. And your first meal post the fast, breaking the fast, needs to be high protein. And for most part, in my experience with fasting, you'll eat anything in sight because you're that hungry. So you need to be really well prepared ahead of time. And fasted exercise is the worst idea ever for women. Men shouldn't really do it either, but for women, there's been research that Stacey actually shared as a part of her course that it was linked to some thyroid conditions as a result of the amount of stress your body goes through being fasted and doing exercise. So not a fan of it. I wouldn't encourage anyone to try it. And if you're going to try it, once again, you need someone who's going to be able to structure and guide it, who actually knows what they're doing.
Fantastic. That's so helpful. Thank you. Michelle and Amy.
Do you have a preference for dumbbells over barbell?
No, they're both useful, and it really just depends on what's available to you. So like that lady I spoke about before who does online training, like if they've not done any weight training, I just get them to buy a couple of light dumbbells and we get really creative with how they use them for a period of time until that no longer is going to stimulate like their muscles basically in their body. Then I would transition them to a gym where they can use barbells and have more free range of equipment. But for the first definitely 4 weeks and even up to 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to get lots of benefit from dumbbells, and they'll still be useful for a home workout no matter where you are. And say for because like when I spoke about frozen shoulder, like essentially that just limits your ability to externally rotate. So for a woman who's got a shoulder injury, I'll use dumbbells as opposed to a barbell because we're not going to aggravate that tendon by being out here holding a barbell, we're going to be able to safely get them to still do a movement without aggravating that injury. So they're still beneficial. And I've got 2 sets of every dumbbell in our gym plus a rack and barbells. They're all great. Just lift heavy shit.
Fantastic. Have we got any other questions from anyone? Let Nathan go.
Margaret, yeah.
Well, oops, I think someone's just popping in.
Yeah, that's Margaret.
Yeah, Margaret there, yeah.
Okay, start again. Yeah, due to reasons, I've had to pull out of attending personal training sessions at the gym. And I chose to walk, but you're saying walking's not the best. But I bought myself a weight vest, and I was just wondering what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, good, really good idea. So when I say walking is not a good idea, and I do it to be divisive to some extent, it's just you've just got to try and find ways to make it challenging, right? So adding the weight vest in and finding hills where you can get out of that zone 2 cardio. And for you, if you don't have a watch, if you can't hold a conversation anymore, you're now tipped into zone 3. And I'm a massive fan of it for obviously mental health reasons. I went for a walk today because I've had a bad day. And I'm about to do a Camino walk in Portugal, so I need to figure out how to do a lot of steps a day. I just finished Milford Track over in New Zealand, and I deliberately bought it to learn how to carry a backpack. Yeah, good.
For 4 days. So, but I found the weight vest, it does increase your glutes and thighs when you actually take it off after 8 kilometers, which is what I do.
Yeah, and what you could also do is you could still, be doing push-ups on your knees and things with that weight vest on. There's so much you could do with that weight vest. If you went to, this is me being creative now, but like if you went to a local park, or if there's like kids play equipment out the back, you can do things like rows and all sorts of even push-ups against like a bar or a wall with that weight vest on. So you could get lots out of that weight vest, especially if you're missing that element of like personal training. You could do lots with that bit of equipment.
Right. And the myth that it builds bone density, do you agree that that's not a myth?
What's that? About bone density?
Bone density increasing by wearing a weight vest.
No, you should still definitely see some adaptations from wearing that weight vest, just from the sheer weight of carrying it. The thing I probably didn't touch on properly with bone density is I encourage women to do box jumping, and even to the point where if they're not comfortable, and they're not when they first start, they're scared as hell of it. They've either got 2 members either side holding their hand, it's like an emotional support thing, or they're holding onto our racks and they're using like one of our skinny weight plates that's like tiny, just to get them over the hurdle. But the impact of hitting something hard is really beneficial. So even if you're just doing little jumps out the back, and if you're wearing your weight vest while you did it, you can literally hold on to a door frame or anything. But I'm really encouraging people to jump. It's really, really important. But yeah, keep using your weight vest. I think that's a brilliant investment.
All right, thank you.
What about skipping? Talking about impact and jumping.
I'm like a baby giraffe for the skipping rope, so don't ask me to teach you how to do it. Yeah, great. Anything that's impacting, especially something with skipping where you've got to use coordination at the same time. Brilliant idea.
Okay, thanks. So if there's no more questions, a huge thank you, Nathan. That's been just fabulous. So much information. I'm sure we've all got some new tips to take away with us, and please feel free to contact Nathan if you've jotted down his details, or I will share them in a message on our Facebook community. So anyone that wants to do this 28-day program, or just chat with him about what you're doing, and if you need some support, please reach out to him.
Do please reach out. As a part of my mission to reach 100,000 people, we have elevated our online program massively. By all means, send us a message if you've got a question. If it's not me, one of my very competent staff will absolutely answer that for you.
And I hope all of you have got some new, thoughts on the fact that a young man can teach us some cool things about hormones and health, even though he's in a totally different kind of age bracket. I think it's wonderful for us to get out of our comfort zones with our kind of mental programming about, what skill sets different people have. And I think, you've got fabulous knowledge. And it's exciting to hear a young man know a lot about women's health. I think it'd be wonderful if more young men kind of embraced, understanding it to the level that you've got. So a really big thank you, Nathan.
You're welcome. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and see you all soon. See you for the next month.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.